I'm Angela Williams.
I'm Katie Sudano.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Welcome to the Voice Up podcast. For those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, Katie and I started this podcast to shed a light on a dark subject, child sexual abuse. And we host survivors to tell their stories, and we host experts. And today we have a very special guest. We are actually hosting my husband as our guest, Philip Williams. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you.
Hi. Did you just call him Philip?
I did call him Philip.
I have never heard that. You've always been Phil to me.
Only when I'm in trouble.
Oh,
and then
are
it's
you in
usually
trouble?
Philip Anthony.
Was that a warning?
Yeah, it could be.
So what we thought would be cool is for you to get to know our husbands, but also to help survivors and husbands of survivors to understand the challenges in relationships. And we have been married for 40 years on August. Well,
oh my goodness.
39 in August, so next year will be our 40th. But I can't say that it's been smooth sailing the whole time, but I can say that I love this man more today than I did 40 years ago.
Aww.
So.
Well, thank you. I love you too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Phil.
Well, grew up in South Georgia. You and I met at Georgia Southern University. At that time, it was still Georgia Southern College. 60, going on 63. Like you said, we've been married for almost 40 years. We have 2 kids, daughter Ashley and son Jacob. And we've had, I think, one of the most amazing lives from looking back where I grew up, thinking forward. I wouldn't imagine the trips, the life, the happiness, laughter, tears, just the full spectrum. So it's been interesting.
I have a question.
Okay.
That was a very nice introduction. Thank you. When did you find out that she had child sexual abuse in her past?
It was, well, when we first met, she was dating a guy that grew up in the same small town that I grew up in. And not a really good guy. So he had already warned her. It's like, look, there's another guy here from my hometown, and we'll probably run into him. And he's a little bit of a player. He's can womanize her.
The other guy said
was
you were a
about-
player?
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I saw them out together, and I went up to him and went and said hey to the guy. And he introduced me to Angie. And I was like, oh, my gosh, what a beautiful girl. What's she doing with this guy? And, of course, I tried to warn her when he went to get a beer. And she said, okay, well, he's playing right into the role that the guy described. And then a few months later, he actually showed some true colors, and she came to me and asked for some help. And I helped her out. And she came back after I helped her and was like, can I take you on a date? I would like to thank you for helping me. And I had to work. I was working as a security guard all night shifts and going to school. And I said, well, I can't do it tonight, but how about tomorrow night? So we went out. But there was something behind her eyes that all this beauty and all this big smile, Kool-Aid smile is what I used to call it. She just would just brighten up a room. But there was something back behind her eyes that was just something that was kind of there. I could pick up on it. And then as we started getting closer, I was so determined to get through college that I did not want a girlfriend at that time. But God just kept drawing me to her and bringing us together. And you could tell that she was intrigued, but at the same time, she was not really wanting to commit. And later I found that she just expected that she felt broken, and she started liking me, and she wouldn't want to join with me and be as a broken person and go through that.
So you think she had some walls built up?
Oh, she had what I wouldn't call it. There were some great walls. There's some great walls of China around there. But the biggest thing that I had to struggle with were the masks. Just the mask and the way she would put on and show one side, but know and feel the energy that was totally different than what she was portraying.
So you saw the masks, but was that early on in your?
That was early.
So did you know that she had this past when you saw those masks?
I asked her to start dating steady. And she said, I don't know.
Wait,
I can't.
we have to pause.
Okay.
Kids, Gen X and
No,
Z.
this is,
Steady means
dating. Yeah. Committed.
No, Facebook official.
Yeah, right.
Facebook
Okay.
official.
I'm 63. I am the least technical social media
just in
guy
case I didn't know what steady meant.
Yeah, so anyway.
You must be nervous. You're bouncing your leg.
Anyway, well, I get that from you.
So
But
we were talking about masks,
and
if you knew.
We were at a bonfire before a football game, and I was holding her, and the song came on. It was Angie, so I started singing it. Angie, I'm not going to sing. It'll be
Come on.
recorded. And just looking deep into her eyes, I just felt that I was falling in love with her. And she said, "You can't," and just walked away. And at that moment, I knew that there was something else there. There was something deeper there. And then over time, I mean, I was working all night. She was going to school and working as a waitress. And she would get off work and call me at work. And I didn't have anything to do except make rounds. So we talked all night long on the phone. It was, and in connecting. And she would share a little bit, but not the whole story, just snippets. And I grew up, I had, my mom was an alcoholic. My dad had his issues. He didn't know how to deal with it, so he was temperamental. And I know the pain that we went through, as I went through as a kid, through divorce and those struggles. And I kept telling him, look, if we ever get together and we connect and we marry, it is for life. It is not words of forever do we part, until death do we part. They have meaning. And I'm going to stand on that.
And you told her this?
Yeah, I told her that.
Did that scare you?
It scared me to death. I thought this is such
like,
this is such a good man. Like, this is a really good man, and I am so broken. And I had this dialogue in my mind that I could never be the wife that he needed. I could never be a good mother. I had all of this baggage, and at the time, all I was doing was trying to suppress the baggage and trying just to survive every day. When you, and I ran away at 17, so I met Phil when I was 18. So there was no time to heal. There was only survival. There was only work to buy food, to keep a roof over my head, to stay in school. There was no time to heal. I had just come out of 14 years of day after day after day of being abused, beaten,
So you
humiliated.
basically not only met him, but you're kind of growing up still in this relationship with all of the stuff you haven't dealt or healed through.
And all I wanted to do was, I wanted his love and his care so desperately, but I wanted to keep him at arm's length, because I knew that if we started dating and fell in love and got married, I felt like he deserved better. There's a better person out there for him. That was in my heart, that I don't deserve this man. Like, he's such a good man, and how could I ever unpack and tell him everything I've been through?
And on the other side of that, I truly feel that God planted that love in me toward her, because I can't describe it, how much I wanted her.
And that's not changed. We've been married almost 40 years, and I still feel that I am the desire of his heart. This man we needed Kleenexes. This man has put me on a pedestal and lives to make me happy, which I know, women, I am so blessed. I know it, and I got a good one. I really did.
Well, like me, because early on in our relationship, I did everything wrong. So you want,
but according to her,
well,
you did everything.
No, she would agree.
Yeah.
She'd wake up and have had a dream of going through an assault, and I would he's not here. And her stepfather, her abuser, was dead. And I would you need to get over it. We need to sit up right now. We need to work through this.
Yeah.
So as a man, I'm a fixer. So I wanted to fix it. So I And a lot of my pain and my stuff, I boxed up and put in a little
Pandora's box.
Pandora's
Little
box,
compartment.
and compartmentalized it, and really didn't deal with it either. But I was getting through it, and I wasn't having flashbacks and triggers and things like that. I did later, a big one, but that was another story for another time, for another show. But she, and she would melt down, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. So I'd get frustrated and feel like I was not capable because I had no training in counseling or walking through something like this. And I so wanted desperately for her to be able to move past that, because there was so much of that emotion and hurt and abandonment that was so tied to her. It's like if you strain a muscle, you don't just, or tear a muscle, you don't just put ointment on it and it get better. And that's what I was trying to do.
Oh, I
was
see.
putting ointment. I wasn't capable of digging in. I mean, Dr. Nick, your husband's a healer. He would know exactly how to go into that deep wounding. I didn't. And it wasn't until probably 2 years in our marriage that finally God said, you need to stop. All you need to do is when she has a moment, you need to just sit up and say, you're all right. I'm here.
And just be there for
and
her.
I love you.
Mm-hmm.
It was
What
probably
can I
more
do?
than 2 years. We probably went through a lot of, I would say before Ashley, and even for about 10 years of our marriage, the first 10 years of our marriage were extremely, extremely challenging, because just like you.
You said challenging, and I got a giggle from you.
yeah.
So what do you
Yeah.
mean, like challenging?
Well, I would start arguments. I would push his buttons, especially before we had children. Everybody in my life that ever loved me hurt me or left me. My biological father left me at birth, so I just had this deep orphan spirit, this deep, you're going to leave me too. And so I wanted him to go ahead and leave early in our marriage. So
so you could be controlled and prepared, and
I could
She
control,
could
have
set
power.
the terms. She
Yeah.
could set the terms of my departure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I wanted the power. I wanted the control. I didn't want to be hurt again. I wanted to hurt before I got hurt.
Well, and that's probably why, like you
Which
said
is a lot
before,
of dysfunction of survivors. And so
Yeah.
I would start arguments, and we would have like a great date planned or a great event, or we would be on vacation, and I would just start this argument over stupid stuff, and he would play along with it. He would argue back with me. So we were pretty
Until I broke.
until he broke, and he said no more. And he held me down one time, and it wasn't violent. It was just, I'm never leaving you. You have the choice. We can be happy or we can be miserable. And I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Well, he anchored you.
He
Yes,
anchored me.
In life coaching terminology, when you're in a heightened state, and he had to do something to get it in and anchor that feeling of he's not leaving.
And he said, it's your choice. It is your choice. And I went to bed that night with those words just rotating in my mind. It's your choice. It's like your choice. And it's like, we had both prayed when we were very young. We had both prayed for a happy family. And really our intention was to pray for God to fix the family we were in. We were both in extremely dysfunctional families. And it was like, God, please, please, I want a happy family. And little did we know that God had stored that dream up for us in the future, because we both came together. And it was at that moment, and I don't know, we probably slipped back and had other arguments, but it was a growing step for us.
And that was after the anchoring
Yeah,
part?
That was after.
part.
It was
But
a changing moment. You have those markers, your spiritual markers in life, and that was definitely a moment where I said, okay, this man isn't going to leave me. He really loves me. And we started to take those steps where we're not getting out of the car ever. We're not ever going to get a divorce.
Did you
We're going to
change
work through it.
when you felt her shift? Like, was there something in you that you did or
Well,
felt?
I just got to the point of why aren't we going
Sorry.
through this yo-yo life? I mean, we would be so happy and joyful and things are going good, and then in a flip of a corner, flip of a switch, we'd be in an argument state. And it was her trying to push, but also Satan trying to undermine. I really do think a lot of those things, those triggers and those things that happened were influenced. But yeah, I mean, when I broke, and I got to take control of this now. And she needs to understand that I'm not going anywhere. And I didn't put two and two together. I wasn't planned. It was just very instantaneous. But it was from the heart. It was true.
And we've learned how to break patterns with each other. when we're in a pattern or we're going down a road that we know there's, we have learned in our marriage that, oh my gosh, could Phil be tired, or could he not feel well, or could he have had a bad day, or is he dealing with extra stress? Like we've learned to have that kind of compassion, going back to love seeks to understand versus be understood. And I think he did the same for me, and giving me more grace and calling me out like Nick called you out. But I think we have opportunities where we choose the trajectory of the outcome. And I didn't feel safe as a person. I didn't feel confident in myself. And he made me, and he worked toward making me feel so safe. And I say today, the safest place I ever feel is in his arms. Like that is the safest place in my world, is in his arms.
And we both came, I was born, like I said, in that very tumultuous situation. So I would go to church. I'd walk to church at 12. My parents weren't going to church, but I was going to church seeking that happy family, not seeking a relationship with Christ. Yeah. So I was going for the wrong reasons. But even when you're going to church and you got to put your heart out there, even for the wrong reasons, God will grab it and make it for the right reason. But then I walked away. My mom died when I was 15, and I really felt she had got to a point where she was about to go through healing and putting a lot of trauma in her past, being able to deal with it and reconcile. And that pain, I'll get back to that point. When we both started going to church and diving deeper into that relationship and turning that our identity from being Phil to being Christ in Phil, or Phil in Christ, that started changing everything. She almost had a meltdown. She had a nervous breakdown and started going to counseling, Christian counselor, did a lot of work. She said, okay, you're now at a point where you've uncovered and processed and gave voice to this. You need to put an anchor marker, and she writes about this in her book. Go on something kind of fun and adventuresome by yourself. So she went on whitewater rafting, and she didn't swim, didn't know that whitewater rafting went from 1 to 5. We thought it was 1 to 10. Went down to class 5. Anyway.
And went down to class 5.
Anyway, my point to all this is that when she did that, God, I think, showed up on that trip and really started talking to her. And then he met her again when he told her to write her book. And he had a plan. Every person, every victim was made with God's plan and purpose, spoken and declared over their lives. It's when trauma and Satan and the world interfere with that, engage there, that causes the abuse. I mean, Jesus is in the room when that's going on, and he's crying. He's crying not only for the victim, but he's crying for the one that's perpetrated, because he didn't have a plan for him to do that either, or her to do that either. So there's a lot of hurt going on in that room when those moments happen. But changing the meaning of it and looking at it, and that's what God did with Angie. All that hurt, all that pain, all that shame, there was an identity being formed around all that negativity. God redefined that. He changed that meaning. I mean, we hear people talk about taking messes and turning them into messages. Test into testimonies. God will do that. He will take the most harmful, painful situation, and if you allow him and you give up ownership of it, and you give voice to it, and you break the bondage and the stronghold of it, and let God, okay, free me from this pain, and now energize me to make a difference. That has been her story for the last 25 years.
Long time.
When I saw that happen, I was like, okay, God's going to take this mess and use this in a powerful way to make change and help. And I've just been along for the ride to see God move and to see the battles that we fought, the victories that we've had, to hear lives change when somebody else can finally get to a point of saying, I'm not identifying myself any longer as a victim. And they transition to that survivor mode, but man, is it such a blessing to see them go to the victorious mode. Get out of it. God don't want you just to survive. God wants you to thrive. And he wants you to be victorious over that pain, over that hurt, over the power that Satan can use and influence through that pain and that hurt. And having that understanding is, I would have not had that depth, and I don't think I'd have the depth of walk that I have with Christ now if it wasn't because of having to walk through this and see the impact that God can have in people's lives. That's through her ministry.
And I just want to say, you said something, the whole thing, what you just said was so powerful. And you said you were just a bystander, that you were just along for the ride, but I disagree. I think that your passion, your compassion, and your empathy, not only for your wife, but of all survivors, like, you've impacted my life. So you're not just a bystander. You're not just along for the ride. You've been a pivotal part in something that's been so difficult, because I've been there through the years, and I've seen your guys' relationship grow. I've seen a softness come over you because of you bring that out in her. I've seen you just kind of, okay, just take it down, relax. It's going to be okay. Breathe. That it's just so beautiful. And it's a great example that there are husbands out there that can be that way and yet be very strong and be the provider and be the leader of the family, but yet be soft and vulnerable for her.
Well, you have to know yourself. You have to know your strengths, your weaknesses, where you can get triggered. I mean, we have to be mindful of that as you're going through this. And I did a Bible study a couple months ago, and this married couple were giving advice, and there were 3 C's, and they just stood out to me. Compassionate. You've used the word compassion. You have to have a degree of understanding that the trauma and the depth of the wounding can't be solved with an ointment. Mm-hmm. It really needs to have an understanding, and I need to hold my tongue, back up, let her have space, or maybe and have a sense of discernment of what is she needing right now. Do I need to kind of push and kind of take a lead and direct, or do I step back and let her process through this? I mean, and that takes time. And it's 40 years of time, and I'm still learning. But you have to be compassionate. Communication is critical. You need to be able to say how I'm feeling. I need to be able to tell her, it's like, look, I think you're reacting this, or if she needs to come to me, it's like, you're being too pushy, or what you just did triggered me. Okay, or that TV show you're watching is not what I need to see or hear right now. And then the other one is companionship. She's my best friend. And she needs to know. And what took time, and we've talked about this, you hear this all the time, she needed to trust me. And the only way she was going to do that is for me to walk side by side and be there to take her back, to cover her back. When she's coming under attack, be the first one to step in and say, no, that's my wife, leave her alone. Yeah. Or back up. Okay, and she needed to see that. And it needed to be genuine and honest, and to the point where I was going to act it out. But at the same time, for me, that companionship, that protection, before her stepfather passed away, and all the people in her lives that turned their back on it and didn't acknowledge it, I carried a lot of bitterness. Mm. I mean, to the point where her stepfather, if I'd have found him in the right position, I'd probably be in jail today. God spared me from that. But he did it in a way that he was in a car accident and was decapitated. We were in Savannah when this happened, and at the house, and the police, state patrol showed up, told us. Well, guess who had to identify the body?
You're kidding.
Me. As much as I wanted to be the one to do it, seeing it done had an effect on me. But I still carried unforgiveness for years. And I went on a retreat. And, I mean, I was in the Bible. I was doing my quiet times and everything, and it was fine. I went on this retreat, And one of the things about it was a time to forgive. And I walk around this corner, and they had staged the road to Emmaus, where all these people on the road where Jesus was walking down carrying his cross. And I turned the corner, and the first guy, he's standing face like this with a rock in his hand, ready to just bash me in the head with it. And I was like, and it shocked me. But when I looked at him, I saw my face and his face.
Wow.
I'm like, am I carrying that? Is that really what that looks like? Mm. We went to the chapel, and God just blew on my soul and said, you've got to let this go. And I started crying. I mean, bawling, crying. And one of the men there saw me and came over and was like, God's working on you with something, isn't he? Mm-hmm. So who do you need to forgive? And I went through a list, about 10 people, but mainly her stepfather and her mom. Mm-hmm. And he stood in the gap and let me express all the anger toward him and then say, I'm going to let this go. What you did was not right. What you did, you're going to get judged for, but it's not my judgment. It's God's judgment, and his judgment was more profound than mine. So, but that power of release. When I came back from that retreat, you're talking about quiet times? Again, generationally, back when you used to have dial-up internet, you get in, you get really slow, hit or miss. It's like I had a high-speed, high-band connection to God. The understanding that I was getting out of the Bible, the depth, praying for wisdom and discernment on questions that I had, I'd have pray for an answer, and the next day I'd have it. And it'd be so deep and profound. But the thing about it is that word that just gave you there is not just for husbands or spouses, but it's for the people who have gone through it.
Wow.
If you have not let go, if you've not forgiven, that is a stronghold that you've got to find a way of processing. And it's not just one time. It can be continuous.
And unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah,
so it really impacts you.
And your relationship, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of our marriage thinking it's too good to be true, thinking another shoe was going to drop, thinking he was going to leave me. Mm-hmm. So it feels so good to sit here after almost 40 years of marriage to know that this man, it is good, and it is going to last, and it is forever. And I have the complete security. And so for our viewers who are survivors, there are good men out there, and you can be happily married for 40 years. And that, to me, is the greatest blessing. We broke the cycle with all the dysfunction and all the abuse and everything that's happened in our life. We were able to break the cycle.
We're stronger people because of it.
Much stronger people because of it. And our love just continues to grow. It's just, we're walking into a new season of life now with having grandchildren and looking at retirement, and it just gets better and better. And I pinch myself sometimes because I get to live this life with you.
Oh, you two are such an inspiration. Phil, at the end of every episode, we have what we call our voice of inspiration. And we'd like you to share what that would be if you could look into your camera and tell our viewers.
Well, I feel like I'm speaking to two different audiences when I offer this up. The person who's gone through the abuse, and then hopefully you'll share this with your spouse or your partner. First off, for the person who's suffered, don't let that pain become your identity. Don't let the trauma and the hurt define who you are. If anything changed, find a way of changing the meaning of it. You didn't intend for it to happen. It wasn't your fault. But take back the power of your life to make the right decisions and choices, and don't live in that suffering. You do have a choice. Jesus paid it all. He took all that in. And his scars are there. Your scars will be there, but they can be healed, and they can be used to prove the love, grace, mercy of Jesus and the power that he has for you and a new identity. For the partners, the spouses, my biggest suggestion is just be compassionate. know that there are going to be masks on that need to be removed, but be prepared for what's behind it with love and grace and mercy, patience. There's years, and sometimes one event happened but caused years of pain and suffering. And it takes time. It takes deep work to heal those torn muscles, those emotionally torn muscles. So just know that. And don't do like I did and try to fix it. Just be there for them. Encourage them. Let them know that you're not going anywhere and that you just want to be there to support and to tell them and show them that you love them. So that's it.
Well, Phil, thank you for being on with us today. I love you with all my heart.
I love you too, sweetie.
All my heart.
Thank you. And I love you too.
I love y'all together. I mean, one horse can pull 1,500 pounds, two horses 5,000.
Well, he's always supported every dream I've always had. He's always supported my advocacy work with the attack that comes with that on our family. And but he's always been there 1,000%, supported my book being written and released and all the other books. And I could not.
I couldn't say no. If God's going to ordain it, he might get rid of me.
I couldn't have done this without you being my rock. So I just want to thank you for that. And I just want to thank my co-host, Katie Sudano.
And thank you, of course, Angela. This wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't for us standing together side by side.
Amen. So you've been listening to the Voice Up podcast, and we just want to thank you. We want you to share this, especially if you know a survivor that this could help. And hopefully it's helped you have a better understanding of the issue of child sexual abuse. And we want to thank Mesmerize Media for making this podcast possible. So
and
Angela.
Feel free to comment. I know people are a little hesitant to comment, but Angela and I are actually the ones who are responding to your comments. If there is something that you need and I don't have the resources, we will find the resources for you. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Go to voiceupforyou.com if you'd like to be a guest on our show. I'm Angela Williams.
And I'm Katie Sudano.
Thank you.
Thank you.